Pittsburgh Steelers fans, it is time once again for another edition of Know Your Enemy. My name is Michael Beck, Deputy Editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Joined as always by my lovely co-host, Mr. Jeffrey Benedict, my brother in Rod Woodson jerseys today. Jeffrey, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I can't. I'm mirroring the. I'm not failing. Stretch off the number. I'm doing well. Rocking the jerseys, ready for the playoffs. It's been a long time since we've had a Cleveland Browns Pittsburgh Steelers matchup, but it goes back. It's great.
Yeah. Well, 2002, I'm guessing was that last playoff matchup. So speaking of that matchup, Matt Wood from Dogs by Nature. Matt, special guest tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing tonight?
Good. I feel underdressed. I mean, maybe I should throw in a trash bag or something if I wanted to get the jersey look. But no, glad to be talking about playoff football. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. The more of these we can do, the better, I suppose, at this time of the year. But Matt, of course, this second of back-to-back games against the Steelers here. What's kind of the vibe that you're getting from the readers at Dogs by Nature heading into this wild card matchup?
What sucks is we've waited for playoff football for this long, and now it's, do you have a coach? Do you have an offensive line? And it's not anticlimactic because, let's be honest, it's playoff football. It's something we 18 years to be a part of. So that's an accomplishment of itself. So I think that's really cool. It does stink that you have the COVID issues, but it's, obviously the Steelers have dealt with numerous issues playing teams, so has had these issues. So I don't think we'll get to a point that this game will be postponed or anything. But at the end of the day, it's, Kevin Stefanski even said today when he met with the press, he's like, I hate the saying, but it is what it is. You got to make sure, and you got to move ahead, and you got to deal with it. So that's kind of the bummer of it. I mean, I would love to be playing the Steelers at full speed ahead. I honestly, there's a large group of people out there that think that the Browns held a lot back in that Week 17 matchup. I think they did. If you kind of look at what they've done over the year and what they did in Week 17, I think they kind of had an eye on, I think we can beat Mason Rudolph. Maybe that was a little arrogant, but hey, it worked out. I mean, a 2-point win is still a win. So all in the shake of it, I think it's going to be a really good game, but I think Kevin Stefanski is insanely important to the Browns. I just do. But, hey, well, you never know. The Cleveland Browns now more than ever have nothing to lose in this matchup.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people already talking about it as house money. Steelers fans this year, obviously having the third time, really, I guess you could probably consider this a breakout. I think Steelers fans are kind of sick of the whole this whole scenario and would rather be playing teams at full force. It definitely takes away from the matchups. But Jeffrey, this is the second of back-to-back games. Does that favor one team or the other being? Is it easier to win two in a row? Are teams more likely to split a series like this? What do you feel about the matchup?
I think this one benefits the Steelers. Like he said, I do think the Browns were holding stuff back. We'll get into that a little later when we break down the game and what's coming this week. I agree with that sentiment. But more than that, the Steelers showed nothing. Like they also, like both teams were kind of just like, man, we don't have to show you everything. And the Steelers showed some real promising things on defense from guys who really weren't, stars. So we've got, it looks good for the Steelers. Everything from that game looked good for us, except the final score. Heading in and you're saying, oh yeah, we get TJ Watt and Cam Hayward and Marquise Pouncey and Ben Roethlisberger back. We get four of the best players on our team back. It feels great. That feels great. But I do think it will be a tougher matchup. But yeah, I don't think the back-to-back, I think the back-to-back in this one is kind of a wash. I don't think that's a big hurt, just simply because neither team really, really showed everything and really had to play, all their players. No one was players. The Browns are getting players back. The Steelers are getting players back. Browns are losing players. It's almost like two different teams playing this week.
Yeah. Now, Matt, this matchup, like you were saying, with no Kevin Stefanski, of course, on the COVID list now, what do you kind of anticipate from the guys on the sideline that will be replacing him in this game?
I wish I had a really good answer. I don't know, and that's kind of the thing. It's all kind of unknowns. I mean, Alex Van Pelt, I think he called plays in Buffalo. But I mean, that wasn't Stefanski's offense. I mean, that's really what this is. So, what to expect? The unexpected? Is that kind of a douchebag answer? But it kind of is what it is here. I think it really kind of lends itself to, look, call something weird. Jarvis Landry's thrown a bunch of passes this year. I don't have the exact number, but I think it's like 4 or 5 passes maybe this year, and he can really sling it. If it goes wrong, all right, I shouldn't have been in this job anyways type of deal. So I really kind of think that you're going to see, I mean, obviously they're going to do, this, it's not like all of a sudden they're going to be running a different offense or anything, but it's going to be the same offense. But I just think you're going to see a team that's going to take a little bit more risks. And if it goes wrong, screw it. They're a year ahead of schedule anyway. So I think it's kind of an interesting, dangerous scenario here if you're Pittsburgh.
Yeah, like Jeffrey, like Matt was saying, like, of course it's going to be an advantage for the Steelers, Cleveland not having their head coach, but because there is this kind of like a side of mystery that you don't really know what to expect, do you think this matchup particularly would be harder to game plan, or is this just something that is just a complete advantage for the Steelers?
I think it is an advantage for the Steelers. I mean, if last year you were like, though Cleveland's playing without your head coach, you'd be like, ooh, that might actually help them when it was like,
not wrong.
Yeah. This year, Stefanski's good. Like they kind of announced themselves with the draft they did this year. Where I was looking at the draft, I had some friends who were like, "What are the Browns doing?" Like Browns fans I have from my growing up in Ohio, were like, "What are the Browns doing?" I was like, "Dude, they just had like a Steelers draft. Like they had that kind of draft where you're like, you just made smart picks. You just got guys you needed to get. You build a team. From there, they've gone. They've changed around the playbook to fit Baker Mayfield better. It was weird. It's almost like they designed an offense around Odell Beckham and then tried to get Baker Mayfield to run it last year. And this year, it's much more Baker Mayfield centered. They realize they have a run game. Like, it's a much better game plan. It's a much better offense. It's just a much better team. For me, it's a big advantage for the Steelers not having Stefanski out there. But what I do want to see is what the Browns do. Because when you have coaches missing from preparation, from coaches missing on the sidelines, what's going to happen is you're going to see leaders step up among the players. And that's big for the future. That might not be great for this game. But if you see the Browns really put a fight to this game, really make the Steelers work for it, really, make this a competitive game, when the COVID situation says this really shouldn't be. The COVID situation says the Steelers should win this game. You don't even have a head coach out there. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be bad play calls. There's going to be, you could see timeouts lost due to they're having trouble getting stuff together. You can see blown plays for the same reason. I think if you do see the Browns come together, it's going to be a great sign for the culture inside the team, for the leadership inside the team. And that's something that pays off down the road, not necessarily in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Matt, there's been a litany of people obviously going on the Browns COVID list. Obviously, the biggest name this week, Joel Bitonio. Can you talk a little bit about the loss of him, and then just kind of my own research? It seems like Michael Dunn, I believe his name is, projects to be the starter, the former AAF player. Do you have any words about who could be starting there if it is done? If you have any idea about his game and just the loss of Joel Bitonio as a whole?
Well, whoever it is, probably about as much as everyone else on that offensive line does about him. I think the 3 guys, I think the names have been kicked around, I think have like a combined 1 NFL snap. So, and of course, with the COVID issues, the Browns haven't had any practices this week. So you're talking about a guy who is literally going to be Joe Thomas once talked about one time he had to make an introduction to a quarterback in the huddle one time, and you're going to kind of see something like that with that left guard spot. And Bitonio's a rock. I mean, that guy has been in the lineup time and time again. And the Browns' offensive line this year went from what was just a train wreck last year to what Pro Football Focus says is the number one offensive line in football this year. The one game they did struggle in, though, was the game against the Steelers earlier this year, where they really kind of got some bad down and distances and just did not look like themselves. But the reason that they're really good is because they're really experienced in the middle with Treader and Bitonio and company, and they're athletic on the edges. So that's been a big difference. Now, losing Bitonio there, trust me, it's not good, but you'd rather lose a guard over a tackle. I think most teams would. And I think the Browns would too, especially against the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's not good by any means. So it doesn't matter who you go in. You had Lamb, you had Hubbard as a backup. You used to play with Pittsburgh there. He was doing really well. He got hurt. He was done for the year. Then they had Nick Harris, undersized kid out of Washington that stepped in, did well. He's hurt. So, I mean, you're not even talking second string guard here. You're talking about losing not only Bitonio, but your second and third string guy. You're down to like fourth, fifth string guards here for the Browns. But like I said, with Treader being in there in the middle, he's being so good. I have no idea if you don't know if somebody's coming off or if they can. Like Callahan was out last week for the Browns, the offensive line coach, who's been a just monster hire. I don't know if he's back or not. He wasn't the one who came off. They got B.J. Goodson off the list today, so that's some good news. You have to be a medical expert, to be a football fan anymore. So it's definitely a big loss, but hey, no one's going to feel sorry for anybody here in 2021. Suck it, 2020.
Yeah, that's really going to be the theme of this year's playoffs. It'd be a real shame if we get down to the nitty gritty of it and say there's a Super Bowl matchup and two quarterbacks go out because of COVID. That would be horrendous for the NFL.
Right. You have to think the NFL is going to it wouldn't let a game like if it's a guard, okay, right? But if it's Patrick Mahomes gets sick, there's no way. Now maybe this is the little brother feeling that I have because as the Browns have watched this year, other teams have been able to play with things. Namely, the Baltimore Ravens have a guy get sick on the field and still gets to play. I don't know. To me, it's like, all right, it's a little upsetting as to be a Browns fan and get to this point and see the team just get ripped apart by this. It sucks, but I mean, I do think that the NFL does have their thumb on the scale here. No, they're not going to cancel for Joel Bitonio, but if it was Baker Mayfield and Ben Roethlisberger got it, I don't know. Maybe it's up for discussion.
Yeah, it really is tough to say. What's really unfortunate about this matchup too, Joel Bitonio, Joe Hayden, the two guys that they're going to be missing from either team from this game. Joe Hayden has one playoff game, and it was the Steelers defense absolutely collapsed and let Blake Bortles throw 5 touchdown passes on him or whatever it was. And whoever team loses, who knows how many more playoff opportunities either of them are going to get. But Jeffrey, speaking of the current COVID news for the Browns, Cam Hayward's coming back rested. I'm assuming because of the matchup, Hayward's going to get double teamed a lot. Potentially that could free up Stephon Tuitt to have one-on-ones all day. Of course, he 11 sack as a basically defensive tackle that just lines up a little bit further outside than the typical defensive tackle. But who do you expect to have a bigger game between the two guys in the middle, Hayward or Tuitt?
This is going to be a rough game because Hayward's coming back. That was the spot that Cleveland attacked. That left guard spot. They went after Chris Wormley. They went after Alualu. They went after anyone who was in that left guard spot in week 17. And that's going to swap to a major advantage for the Steelers. And one of the reasons the Browns really didn't run away with the game in week 17 was Alex Highsmith did a fantastic job on Wills. Like, just a fantastic job. Better, like, I went to the film because I was like, he had a good day. Went to the film. He was creating havoc over there. Wills was really struggling with him. I don't know if that was just Wills had a bad game, wasn't ready for Alex Highsmith. Alex Highsmith like took it on himself to really step it up, but he was winning that matchup, and the Steelers were losing the matchup next to him. If Cam Hayward is really dominating that left guard, it's going to be hard for the Browns to give him much help, because then if you're shifting, like if you're sliding to give Cam Hayward double teams from the center, like what are you doing with Tuitt and Watt? Like you got TJ Watt over there. And if Highsmith is doing well against Wills, there's only so much help to go around. If they start having to keep, 6-7 guys into block and just running 3 routes, the Steelers are going to absolutely win this game. That is, you can't do that against this secondary. You can't. You've got to spread them out. You've got to find, weak points. You've got to attack them with more targets than that. So that's one of the big keys to the game, is just how that goes down and how they do try to do it. I have no clue. If I had to face this defensive line with a guy who had not played in the NFL, I'd be like, well, just give someone else my job. I'm going to go home.
Yeah, I think that is going to be the matchup. Obviously, since Bitonio went on the list, that people are going to be watching out for. This game, as most games are, won in the trenches. That's absolutely going to be the case. Now, Matt, you guys have you have 2 outstanding running backs, but one in particular might be one of the best in the NFL, and Nick Chubb. Can you just talk a little bit about how good he's been this year, and whether or not he can still find success if that O-line does have a more of a down day?
Nick Chubb, and maybe it's my Browns fandom. I know Derrick Henry gets a ton of love, and rightfully so. Derrick Henry is phenomenal, but Derrick Henry gets a humongous workload. And if Nick Chubb saw that kind of workload, he would put up those kind of numbers. So that's my opinion. Last year, Nick Chubb had the rushing title wrapped up until Derrick Henry exploded for 200-something yards in Week 17. So for people that haven't seen Nick Chubb, and that was one of the reasons I thought the Browns held something back in Week 17, because they didn't really run Nick Chubb very much. And when he really gets going, I'm telling you, I could maybe count on one hand the times that Nick Chubb has been taken down by the first guy. And that's with this kind of run scheme, to get those one-on-one matchups, that's a great win for the Browns. So if you can put a helmet on a helmet and just, get in the way of somebody and give Nick Chubb that one-on-one opportunity, he's going to make something happen more often than not. You kind of saw that with the long touchdown run early in Week 17. He's really just fun to watch. And again, he's on my team, so it's really fun to watch. And he's so different than what you get from Kareem Hunt. When Kareem comes in, he's a passing guy. He had a huge block on Baker Mayfield's game-winning run there at the end. And it's something that he's kind of done more of this season, and I think he really likes. So it makes it really dangerous when the Browns bring them both in, because it's not just the passer. It's not just kind of a guy, running a route to run off somebody. It's definitely kind of a new wrinkle to it. And they have been such a dynamic duo because they wear teams down. There's a reason that the Browns seem to get better offensively as the game goes on, because that isn't today's NFL. I mean, as you see with the Steelers offense, it's definitely more pass driven. It's that kind of, you rarely see these pounding run teams. And you get it with, obviously Tennessee, but Cleveland's kind of right there with them. You're kind of a unicorn. And it's been a lot of fun to watch, but I'm telling you, the way you beat the Browns, it's kind of like how you beat the Ravens. You've got to get out early. And once you get out early, it then becomes, you've got to throw the football. And then you lose the play action. You lose that kind of stuff. You lose the ability to even just lean on the run a little bit. And that's how you kind of get the Browns out of the offense. If you let the Browns get the early lead and lean on that run game, I'm telling you, it is wearing teams down. And, and fingers crossed for the Browns. Hopefully they do get out to that lead, because that is how you can, you guys talk about the pass protection and stuff, just run at them. And you've even seen Stefanski as in the couple games earlier this year, when they were down in games, they continued to run the football. They don't panic when it comes to that stuff. But once you get to a certain point, you really got to start chucking it. But no, I think that's it. Nick Chubb is really, and look, as a Browns fan, I've watched other teams beat up on my teams and taken an ability to respect talent for what it is. Nick Chubb is really phenomenal, and considering the knee injury he had coming out of college, when the Browns picked him, I was like, that sucks. That dude's got one leg, right? And no, he's just been absolutely phenomenal. A real physical freak and the quietest guy. The NFL had him mic'd up for the game against the Eagles, and it was like a 4-minute clip. I think he said like 6 words in the whole thing. So he's definitely unique, and he's an absolute beast.
Yeah, like a young Frank Gore, really. Super quiet, knee injury, but absolute beast that's completely durable now. But Matt, fire one more quick question at you before getting Jeffrey one here. But Denzel Ward, is there any update on whether or not he might play? Just given the timeline, it seems like there's a possibility he misses Sunday as well.
Yeah, that's kind of the one that I've seen some people say that he could be back. He should be back. It's one of those things where, what day did he test positive, or did he test positive? And, and you see a lot of these things, but I hope so. If he does, he completely changes the back end of that defense. If he doesn't play, I mean, there are just walking human bullseyes back there for the Browns. He is definitely the 1++ starter that the Browns have in the back seven. And if he doesn't play, man, it's thin pickings on the back end.
So with that, Jeffrey, if he does play, what does that mean for Ben Roethlisberger and how he spreads the ball around?
That's a difference maker. We saw that big pass downfield to Chase Claypool. He was untouched. The cornerback was just trying to run with him, and it's like, you're not going to win that. You're not going to win that against Chase Claypool. Denzel Ward is a perfect matchup for Chase Claypool because he can. He is great at getting into his routes, being physical, stopping you from getting into your spots that you need to be. And that's what we've seen with Chase Claypool is they've allowed a lot of physical contact. We've talked about that from the beginning. He's an incredibly physical receiver, so they're letting defensive backs get incredibly physical with him. And that's how you stop him. If Denzel Ward negates Claypool on a lot of those long routes, comes in and he can play Deontay Johnson too, that's a nightmare for the Steelers offense, because if you take away those deep balls, it's really hard to get anything going for the Steelers. It's almost like you have to execute every play perfectly or get Ben Roethlisberger just absolutely on fire, which we know he's good for like 2-3 drives like that a game at most. It makes it tough sledding for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It really does. Those big plays, they almost always end up points. Those drives, if you get a big play, it's almost always points. When they don't, this offense can struggle and really stagnate.
As Jeffrey freezes there right at the end, we got most of that answer. But Matt, there's another huge loss for the Browns in Olivier Vernon. The news coming that he ruptured his Achilles. Of course, he's a free agent. That's massive for him because that injury probably even takes him out next year too. But outside of that, how do the Browns kind of recover from a loss like someone who's having a second breakout season, I suppose, like Olivier Vernon?
You're going to need a couple guys to step up. I mean, he wasn't even coming off the field there for the Browns. He had been really good. He really was kind of quiet early on the year, which is kind of surprising considering how good Myles Garrett was for the first 10 weeks of the season before he got COVID. And then when Garrett went out, you kind of thought, all right. And then OV stepped up in a huge way. He was really, really good. And it just sucks to have anybody get hurt in that kind of fashion. And like you said, he was kind of headed towards another payday. And I don't know if that was going to be in Cleveland or somewhere else, but he's a pass rusher. So somebody was going to step up. So the Browns have some bodies to throw at you at the defensive end. None one is going to be as good as him, but you just have to be pretty good on the other side of Garrett. And he seems like he's kind of getting a little bit more back in the swing of things. When Garrett came back, he said, he had a hard time breathing. You could just tell that he wasn't his normal self. He's getting back a little bit, but he's got to put on the cape on Sunday night. If Myles Garrett is just not a one-man wrecking crew, which he can be, If he's not, man, the Browns just stink. Getting pressure, they just do. And that's the thing. If it's not Denzel Ward or Myles Garrett making a play, and for a while they're Olivia Vernon, they just don't really have anyone that's going to make plays. So it's going to have to be just a complete monster game out of Garrett when it comes to that, unfortunately.
Now, Jeffrey, on the Steelers side of things, obviously some guys have got some rest. Are you concerned about rust at all?
I'm not. On the Steelers offense with Ben, you have to be a little concerned, but we know you're not going to get 4 great quarters out of Ben Roethlisberger. That rarely happens anymore. You're likely to see a really ugly first quarter, and then, hopefully we get that back. Hopefully he comes and gets that back. The worrisome thing is if he comes out and plays great, but the Steelers aren't scoring points early, because in the second half, isn't going to be good. So I'm not as concerned about Russ, especially not with Cam Hayward or TJ Watt. We've never seen those guys come off a break and struggle. So I'm not worried about them. Terrell Edmonds is coming back from injury, so we'd see if he's 100%, but Sean Davis was bad. I love Sean Davis as a free safety. I was always defending him. He is not what he was before his injury last season, and he wasn't great then. He was just solid. So he's bad now. It's sad watching him. Maybe he needs a year to get really back, but he's not. He was bad. So Edmonds back. Those guys, I don't think Russ is going to be an issue for them. Ben Roethlisberger is the big one, though. And hopefully we get a really good half out of him like we did it against Indianapolis, because that's enough for this team.
Now, Matt, speaking of Ben Roethlisberger, what's kind of the difference in game plan when the Browns are playing Ben Roethlisberger versus when they played Mason Rudolph a week ago?
I think, and maybe this is just the guy from the outside looking in, but at least Mason Rudolph can throw downfield, which is something that I've kind of picked up on. The Steelers games I've watched this year is definitely a quick passing game. Rudolph can throw deep. Now, whether or not it's a good throw or not, he can at least throw deep. And if you get somebody that can throw over your head, you have to at least respect it. I get it. Ben Roethlisberger still, Ben Roethlisberger. But I think that's kind of the difference, is how else can you rattle a quarterback when they're throwing the football, a second and a half later? It's kind of been really weird. The big thing that sucked about playing Big Ben, 5 years ago is he was hard to sack because he was just, able to extend plays. And those are just, backbreakers. You don't really and again, I'm limited. I'm not nearly as watched as much as you guys, but from what I've seen, it's a very quick passing, and you have to be meticulous when it comes to that kind of offense, because if you have a drop or you have something like that, especially if the run game's not there, you can kind of get that to struggle a little bit. So what's the difference? I think it's there. And maybe the chunk plays can still come for Pittsburgh, but I think the Browns will be very content with keeping everything in front of them, especially in front of guys not named Denzel Ward, and be happy with that. And if you can go ahead and, put together 9-play drives, okay, go ahead and, try to get it back on offense. But I think the Browns will kind of keep everything in front of them. Maybe, hopefully, he throws us a few. And at the end of the day, like I said, hope 95 does some Superman stuff there and maybe gets to the quarterback in time. So I think that's maybe the biggest difference. And trust me, I don't think Mason Rudolph's a good quarterback. I have no idea why the Steelers haven't upgraded that position of backup quarterback in those 2 years. Plus, I just think he's a douche. But that has nothing here nor there. So I think that's kind of the biggest difference, is he can throw downfield. And maybe, Roethlisberger surprises us, but I think that's kind of the biggest takeaway there.
Right now, and like you're saying, like the only time this year I'd say the Steelers kind of got away from that quick passing game for a consistent quarter was that fourth quarter against the Colts, and that was the best quarter Ben's played this year. So he's got to hold on to the ball a little bit more in the playoffs if the Steelers want to have any sort of a run. But as we get to the 30-minute mark, people listening to the podcast side, flip over to part 2 if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. Just hang tight. Pittsburgh Steelers fans, we are back for the second part of Know Your Enemy. My name is Michael Beck, joined by Jeffrey Benedict and Matt Wood of Dogs by Nature. Jeffrey, as we get in this matchup here, one of the things that was super apparent on film was the Browns having more of a heavier personnel in the game, and then splitting everyone out wide, 5 wide, and putting guys like Alex Highsmith on Jarvis Landry. That's a huge mismatch, of course. It's something the Steelers have struggled with all year long and for years now, having those terrible matchups. But what do the Steelers got to do to try to keep themselves out of situations like that? Or are they just kind of screwed into playing defenses where guys like Highsmith lined up Jarvis Landry?
I'm gonna go with that not being that big of a problem. I may surprise people here. Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt both have a better quarterback rating against. If you look at the targets and everything against them, they do better. They have a better passer rating against than Minkah Fitzpatrick. Bud Dupree is not far behind, and to combine, the numbers are incredible. Their coverage numbers are fantastic. And really, Alex Highsmith on Jarvis Landry was a great example of why they do that. When you take them out wide, you have to put linebackers in coverage. And what the Browns and most teams do is they put even the Steelers, when they put James Conner and they rotate him outside, they're not putting him in the slot. They put him all the way outside. Because they're like, if you want to put a running back, if you want to put your linebackers way outside where they have no clue what they're doing, no linebacker is prepared to play outside cornerback, that's fine. We'll attack that. That's like... Teams are like, we can go with that. We'll deal with that. That's great for us. What the Steelers do is they put their linebackers in the slot, which usually puts them against a really good cornerback. But they do that because now behind them, especially with that Jarvis Landry, Alex Highsmith, behind Alex Highsmith was Minkah Fitzpatrick. So yeah, Jarvis Landry, you have a mismatch there. But if you go deeper than 8 yards, you're getting bracketed by Minkah Fitzpatrick and Alex Highsmith underneath. So the linebackers know I don't have to keep this guy in front of me. I can play the underneath stuff, funnel him to the middle. You'll often see him take a hard outside or a hard inside leverage just to play take that one side of the field and say, if you beat me deep, that's fine, because then your quarterback's throwing at Minkah Fitzpatrick. And no one wants to do that. And when they do, it's like, hey, we'll take a interception return for a touchdown to start the game. That's great. Go ahead, throw deep on Alex Highsmith. So that's not a problem as far as I see it. I think that's actually something the Steelers have done really well at defending and helping those guys do those matchups. And it helps everyone else too. If you take the best receiver on the other team and you're like, we're going to cover him with our outside linebacker, and we're still going to win that matchup, that means all your other defensive backs, They've got easier assignments. Everyone's got a slightly easier assignment. They may have to carry that one-on-one, but that's a slightly easier assignment for everybody else. Really good work by the Steelers defense. It just often you see, Jarvis Landry caught one there where they ran a rub route. They ran a tight end right into Alex Highsmith, and he's a linebacker. The cornerbacks that struggle with those routes, the linebacker is going to really fail, especially when it's Jarvis Landry executing it. He's just phenomenal especially at the rub routes. Jarvis Landry is just incredible on those. I don't see that as a big problem. A bigger problem is going to be who's playing the other outside cornerback spot. If the Browns spread the field a bit more and we have to go nickel or we go dime, Justin Lane, he struggled, and there was some miscommunications with him that led to some big third down conversions. And then, Sean Davis didn't play well. So I'm interested in that's really a bigger weakness even than getting linebackers out in coverage, in my opinion.
Right. Now, obviously the guy that's dishing the ball out, Baker Mayfield, first playoff start, Matt. Is he ready for this moment, or is there some worry that he might have one of his multi-turnover type games?
You never know. That's what makes Baker so much fun, man. You never know. If bad Baker shows up, it's not good. It's not good. If good Baker shows up, and I mean this, when Baker's on, that dude can play with anybody in the NFL. And I mean all the way up to Patrick Mahomes. You got to remember, there's 2 times this year Baker Mayfield has thrown for 4 touchdowns and a half. And that was against Cincinnati and against Tennessee. Now, not great defenses, but when he is on, he is just lights out. I mean, he has all the arm talent in the world. And the best thing about Baker, and this is coming from a guy who has watched numerous guys come in there and fail in that position, is he honestly just doesn't give a damn sometimes. And the Browns needed somebody like that to say, well, no one can win in Cleveland. Well, I can, and well, no one can win with that ownership. I can. And you needed some of that bravado that Baker obviously has. It goes back to the Oklahoma days, whether or not it's grabbing the crotch and all that stuff. You got to remember, this is a guy who was a walk-on at Texas Tech, and he played well and lost his job and said, all right, I'm going to go to your rival, and won a Heisman, became the number one pick. So all this stuff about not having your coach and the COVID stuff, most guys you would be like, yeah, chances are it's just not there. But with Baker, you just don't know. He definitely does have that Brett Favre streak in him of, if he's hot, Katie bar the door. It doesn't matter if he's down Odell Beckham. It doesn't matter if the O-line falls apart a little bit. It's if he's on, he's on. And but when it comes down to it, is he as scared of the moment or anything? I don't think so. But if you can rattle him with pressure, that's the biggest way to kind of get to him. And if you get Baker Mayfield off his spot and kind of get him seeing ghosts, he really got screwed up by last year. The Browns' offensive line was borderline what you kind of saw happen to Cincinnati and Joe Burrow this year. And it really did affect him. Even into the early part of this season, you could tell when things would start to go wrong with him, especially up right in front of him, he would panic a little bit. As the year went on, he got a lot better. And as the year went on, he got a lot better. So I think that's it. If you can pressure him early on a game and kind of get him rattled a little bit, that's your best shot. But if he gets comfortable, you don't know. And that's as a Browns fan, I love it, especially when he starts talking trash a little bit and starts jumping around, because that team follows his lead. I mean, he's like Hugh Jackson was famous for it, saying it on what was it, the HBO show, Hard Knocks. He's like the Pied Piper, and he really is. That team will follow him. And like I said, I'm hoping he gets hot early, because if he is, we're in for a good one.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said about Steeler fans watching Ben Roethlisberger, especially in his younger days, just kind of be a gunslinger. So I think we can all appreciate not really knowing what you're going to get from your quarterback. And I guess we kind of get that from Ben, especially these days now on the backswing of his career. But Jeffrey, the Steelers weren't able to force Baker Mayfield into making any turnovers last week, week 17. And that's really what ended up being the difference in the game. What do they got to do this week to try to get the ball into their hands instead of the back of the end zone?
Got to get that pressure, especially up the middle. Like if Steelers are doing a great job with containing quarterbacks. It's not as good as it was when Bud Dupree was in there. It's one thing I'm trying not to plug it early, but my film room tomorrow is about Alex Highsmith's game there. And one of the things he does is he does a great job getting in there, disrupting the quarterback's pocket. What he doesn't do a great job is of containment. We saw twice Baker Mayfield get out of the pocket and run and do something with the ball that was good. But that's a big key, is just get that pressure up the middle. And it's almost the same key like he was saying for Baker, and what you were saying about Ben. It's the same thing. When Ben Roethlisberger has confidence in the offensive line in front of him, and they're not getting people in his face, they're not getting people at his legs, they're not, getting that noise around him, he does great. That's what we saw against the Colts, is that pocket was holding, even against DeForest Buckner. And he started holding the ball that half a second longer. You saw him break out of the pocket, run and find somebody on the fly. Like, when was the last time we saw that? It's not been very often this year, but that's vintage Ben. That's when he's at his best. If this week they can get in his face, he starts throwing. He starts throwing those 1/2 second, like, I get a second and a half and I'm throwing. He starts doing that. I'm going to set the pocket 10 yards deep and let Myles Garrett just run in a straight line right at me. That's terrible. When he does that, the whole offense falls apart. When he starts, trying that. And he also just starts looking at one read. He takes his first read, like he does his pre-snap read, and just goes with whatever he saw there. He's not changing receivers. He'll throw into coverage. because he doesn't trust what's in front of him, and he's not the quarterback he was in the past. He will not take those hits. When he does take hits, it affects him. It's not like old Ben where it was like, okay, he's not doing well. Wait till someone gives him a good shot in the face. You get a helmet to helmet in the face with Ben Roethlisberger. Okay, now he's going to play better. That's the old Ben. That's not this guy. It's not a 38-year-old Ben Roethlisberger. He can't do that. They have to keep him clean, just like the Browns have to keep Baker Mayfield clean. So it's gonna be, which is great because it's kind of the strength of both teams with really strong lines. Lines is where it's at, and that is trenches. So it's gonna be fun to see that. That's gonna be the real game. There is who does better, protecting their quarterback and getting after the other one.
Now, Matt, we did talk about Nick Chubb already in that Browns running game, but Baker Mayfield and Kareem Hunt, also two kind of pieces in that running attack. Can you talk about what they bring to the game that might be a little bit different than Nick Chubb?
Nick Chubb is kind of like water. And because he's just constant and it'll wear you down. Hunt's more of an explosive power guy. And the thing is, if Nick Chubb's there, he'll get you 4 yards every time. You're going to have a little bit more of the zero carries for Hunt as he tries to kind of maybe be a little bit more explosive, kind of maybe bounces things outside when he should just maybe take what's there. But he'll also he'll put his head down and just get it. And just run you over at times. So they definitely have those different styles that I mentioned. And, you guys mentioned it. Baker can hurt you with his feet. And if he gets out of the pocket, he's going to look to throw the football, but he's actually a little bit, he's not as fat as he was last year. And I say that from a place of love because he just did not look like a finely tuned athlete last year. This year he does. He's lost a little bit of the rounder midsection, and it shows with his feet. He'll pick it up, and he's really willing to go head first. He'll dive for the first downs. Maybe sometimes he should slide, but they definitely add something, and they'll sometimes show you some option stuff. I know in the past you've kind of, whether it's something to Landry and he's run some option stuff. They kind of kept that in the playbook from Freddie Kitchens. So they'll show you some different looks, but that's the kind of the thing with the Browns offensive personnel. They have a lot of stuff they can run with the two backs. They like the 13 personnel as well. They'll bring in 3 tight ends, and that's where the Stefanski offense really likes to live, where they can throw to Njoku and, the young kid Harrison Bryant, or they can, just pound the football with 3 tight ends too. They're all willing blockers with Hooper there as well. Not great, but more than willing. And that's sometimes all you need out of a tight end. So the offense doesn't really change when Kareem Hunt comes in. If anything, I would say the Browns also like to run some wheel routes with Kareem Hunt. They'll take some shots there if they can get it. But if not, they'll kind of put it in their back pocket and then just kind of go to second down. So the offense doesn't really change as much. It's just a little bit more of a different attack style, if you will.
Jeffrey, early in the show, we talked about some of the returning players from the Steelers that were just resting. But there's 2 names that were not activated, but have begun practicing and now are designated to return from the injured reserve. And both are expected to actually play for the Steelers. That seems to be the rumor out there right now. Those being Matt Filer and Robert Spillane. How big would it be getting those 2 guys back in the lineup?
Spillane is huge. Spillane is enormous. He is our best linebacker covering running backs. We love those dog blitzes where if the running back stays into block, the linebacker covering them in man transitions to blitzing. He is so quick to do that. He picks that up quickly, but he can also peel off if they fake like they're blocking and run on the route. He's great at adjusting to that and getting out there. That's really his strength on this team, is being that guy who man covers running backs and can turn that into a fantastic blitz. He is by far our best at that, and that is really what he brings to the field. People will notice we ran a lot of zone. We've run a lot more zone and a lot less man since Spillane went down. With Bush and Spillane out, we don't have man running guys who can cover running backs in man. Spillane brings that back to the defense, and that's going to be a big deal. That's going to be a great returning asset. love that he's coming back. He also is a playmaker on run. He on running plays. I've compared him in the past to the linebacker version of Minkah Fitzpatrick, where if the play is in front of him, he reads it quick and he gets to the ball. It's just that's his big skill. That's his best strength, and he's a playmaker when he does. He's got fumbles, he's got interceptions. Like he'll do it. He'll do those kind of plays. So I love Robert Spillane. I love what he's bringing back to this defense. I hope he's 100% and ready to go, because that's a game changer for the Steelers defense, getting him back. As for Matt Filer, I like getting him back. I love your smile. You know where I'm going with this. But if the Steelers, so help me, if the Steelers put Kevin Dotson on the bench to start Matt Filer, I will drive down to Heinz Field and just start yelling out my car window at that stadium. I will go absolutely lose my mind. I will lose my mind if they take Kevin Dotson off the field and put him back in. Matt Filer is a fine player. He was a fantastic tackle for us last year. He switched to guard, covered Aaron Donald. I'm not taking anything away from him. Kevin Dotson is an absolute find at guard. He is a mauler. He was an absolute beast. Even against Cleveland when he was playing next to Hassenauer, he did great. Hassenauer was getting driven back into the court pocket all the time. When he's with Marquise Pouncey, Pouncey looks like he's 5 years younger. Like, the two of them together are just phenomenal. So you can't take Dotson off the field and play Filer. If they do and they lose, everything I write for the next 6 months is going to be tinged with just so much anger over that decision. And it's exactly the Steelers thing they would do, is go like, oh, Filer, he's our veteran. He was penciled in week 1 as our starter. He's back. Let's put him in to start. And we all know him and Villanueva didn't do well. Him and Pouncey weren't doing. He just wasn't good there. They need to play Dotson.
I'm glad you got that out, Jeffrey. I think that's been building. But Matt, specifically in this game, the Steelers, well, actually taking a step back, one of the more surprising things in Week 17 to me was the Steelers were still able to get 4 sacks on Baker Mayfield, and that even with Joel Bitonio still in the lineup. Honestly, I thought last week was when that Steelers consecutive sack streak was going to die. I had no expectations of them getting the quarterback. Both games this year, the Steelers have played the Browns. They've sacked Baker Mayfield 4 times. What does this offensive line have to do, or even Baker Mayfield himself? What do they have to do as a whole to keep Baker Mayfield standing upright?
They've got to get creative. And look, I think the Browns' offensive line is fantastic when they're healthy. But, I mean, you can't keep people that – well, let me see this. You can't keep somebody away from a defense like that the whole game without being creative. If you're just going to say, hey, let's just run it and then we'll pass when we get in obvious pass situations, you're just setting yourself up to fail. One thing you didn't see Week 17 that I think you're going to see a lot of is screens. The Browns are a really good screen team, and they didn't run any in Week 17, and I thought that was significant because I don't think they wanted to show them any screens. The Browns are really inventive with those. They'll run tight end screens. They'll run running back. Whatever it is, they will let you get upfield and then go right over your head. So I think that's one thing you can do. And plus, I think the other thing you can do is just stay in good down and distance. You want to go back into Kevin Stefanski's time with Minnesota. There were games where the Vikings just got annihilated and just looked awful on offense. And that you can with this offense. In this whole, Kubiak, Shanahan offense, whatever you want to call it, the same coaching tree, if you get them knocked out of kilter, it can be really bad. And any one of those coaches have had just some games on there you're like, good God, And the Browns, they're not exempt from that. But if this offense stays on target and stays in front of the sticks and stays on task, that's when it can really start humming and it can really be dangerous. So what do they need to do? They need to run the football effectively. They need to keep Nick Chubb involved in this. And when they do get in some dangerous down and distances, make that defense kind of question itself with, is this Is this a screen, things like that, and give him that extra half second that he may need to find somebody downfield. It's definitely going to be a team effort. There is no magic elixir, and TJ Watt's going to have his sack and do his little dance and all that kind of stuff, and that's cute. And they'll have those. But once he does have that, can you get those yards back and make those downfield strikes? I think that's really going to be the difference.
If I can jump in here real quick, this is one of the points I wanted to make. This is one of the keys to the game for the Steelers and for the Browns is exactly that. The Steelers need to get them in those longer yardage situations. This week 17, straight from there, they had 4 times where the Browns got on a Browns drive where in second or third down, it was farther than 10 yards. Every single time that happened, the drive ended with that set of downs. If it was 2nd and 11, the drive was over in week 17. The previous time we met, they converted 2 second downs longer than 10 yards. One was a pass from Case Keenum. One was a run for Kareem Hunt. That's it. Baker Mayfield has not gotten a first down on any series against the Steelers this year where it was longer than 10 yards on second or third down to go. That's the Steelers' secret. Their defense is so good in those long yardage situations, and the Browns are not. So that is the secret. Those 4, and the great thing is there were 10 total drives for the Browns offense. 2 of them were the end of half drives, the end of the game and the end of the first half. 4 of them ended with the Steelers getting a play second or third down longer than 10 yards. Every single other drive was a score. So for the Steelers defense, get those plays, get it longer than second and 10 or third and 10, and get off the field. And for the Browns, keep it rolling. If they can keep from those situations, they can move on this defense. And that's what you got to do. You've got to keep the pressure on Ben. You've got to keep the Steelers needing to execute for 4 quarters, because if we have to score for 4 quarters, we're not going to win the game.
Now that one drive at the end of the game, that ended with the Browns victory formation, didn't it?
Yes. That's what I'm saying.
I just want to say that on your podcast.
Yeah, those 2 drives don't count. Like you ended, like there's 8 real drives in that game, and it was 4 or 4. You either get a longer than 10 yards thing or you don't, and the Browns are going to score on you.
Now, Jeffrey, getting back in our regular questions,
Sorry.
It's all good. I love that, but we talked about Robert Spillane a little bit earlier. Of course, him coming back. The Steelers have 3 guys on the inside that I figure would play a little bit more, especially because Marcus Allen still continues to have his problems with stingers. I believe he was a full participant in practice today, so he'll still be available. But how do you anticipate the Steelers rotating Avery Williamson, Vince Williams, and Robert Spillane?
I think Spillane plays if he is fully healthy, he plays almost every base package and every nickel snap we have. Marcus Allen works in dime. All the plays the Steelers love to run in their dime set, it's like a completely different defense. Their dime set is completely different than the rest of their defense. They run that beautiful cover 3 that seriously, the Browns were just dumping it off underneath, and twice they ran it when the Steelers were clearly going to go into that cover 3. The Browns didn't even try to get first downs. They were like, let's just gain some yards and try for next time. That's one of my favorite plays in football is the Steelers cover 3 defense that I call their tent defense. Steeler fans will know it from watch on screen. If the nickel cornerbacks just starts bailing out super deep, it's that play, and it almost never fails to prevent a first down. That's fantastic. I love that play, but that's their dime. Nickel, I expect to see Robert Spillane. I expect you'll see Vince Williams more in base packages, and especially when the Browns go 3 tight ends, you'll see more of Vince Williams because of how they do coverage. It's easier for him to just cover a smaller zone in the way they cover those. And I think you'll see Avery Williamson more in nickel.
Now, Matt, in this game, I think we saw a week ago, at times Myles Garrett would check out of the game. It seemed like he'd be favoring an arm or a shoulder. Also, like we mentioned earlier, he's talked about how he's had problems breathing since his battle with COVID-19. Is he playing this game 100% healthy, or is there still a little bit missing his game?
Oh, no, he's not. He's not his normal self. I mean, earlier on this year, he was, and not to upset any TJ Watt fans, he was the best player, a defensive player in football. I mean, he was once a game. I mean, it was a strip sack. I think at one point in time he had something like 4 strip sacks or something. Anyway, I don't know the exact numbers offhand. He was the best defensive player in football, and he's not that right now. And he will tell you that. He's just not his normal self. He's getting closer. But yeah, right now he's not. It's a shame because he really was just an absolute wrecking ball the Browns really don't have, like I've said before, the Browns have Denzel Ward and Myles Garrett. Sheldon Richardson's been really good this year at times. And Olivier Vernon, their linebackers are just not good. And the rest of their secondary is really not good. Harrison's been okay at times. Outside of that, they don't have anybody. And they've been okay on defense at times. So that's how good he was. And like I said, he's going to have to be that good come Sunday because he just hasn't been that. And if he's not, look, I can't knock the guy. It's a pandemic. I get that. But I'd love it if he is. And if he is, that's a big step for the Browns. But if I was a betting man, no, I don't think he's going to be, week 2 Myles Garrett.
Well, especially if he was able to bounce back. He typically eats Alejandro Villanueva's lunch. Mm-hmm. But Jeffrey, as we're getting to the top here, a couple more questions. But Josh Dobbs, of course, he inserted himself in the offense last week. Did you see that package staying in the offense with him being activated, or do you think that was more of just a smoke screen so that the Browns had to prepare for it?
That was a Mason Rudolph thing. I think that's purely Mason Rudolph. Get Mason off the field, get some plays, hopefully get some positive yards, make some things happen. They're not going to take Ben off the field. They're not going to. It's just, they're not. That's not a thing.
Yeah, it is funny, though. Like when he was asked at his press conference today, Ben Roethlisberger, he loves him some Josh Dobbs. Anytime he talks about Mason Rudolph, he quickly deflects and says, well, and Josh Dobbs. But then today when he's asked about Josh Dobbs, he's like, oh, I'd love to come off the field for Josh. He's amazing. It's the weirdest thing that he actually likes a backup quarterback. I don't know if that's ever happened before. But
yeah, it's weird.
Since we're at the pretty much the end of our show here, Matt, we typically end with 3 questions. I'll pose them to Jeffrey first, so you got a second to think of it. But first one off the top, just a really easy one, Jeffrey. Your X factor for the game?
My X factor for the game is Nick Chubb.
Oh, period. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's like really everything. If he is running, if he's that, I've used this before. I think the Browns are on the level of the Steelers' 2004 offense. 2004, where they just had the offensive line. They had multiple running backs. Chubb reminds me of Jamal Lewis and Jerome Bettis. He is that kind of an AFC North running back. Like those are who you compare him to. This is a guy that can, if the Browns had a defense, he could carry them. He could be like, put this on me. I'll get Baker some easy matchups. I mean, when we won the Super Bowl in 2005, Ben Roethlisberger was throwing deep passes against 8 and 9 man boxes. Like that's how any quarterback can succeed at that. Even a guy like Ben Roethlisberger, who was talented but had no clue what he was doing when he was super young in 2004 and 2005. He really didn't know how to play quarterback yet in the NFL, but he had success because the run game was just brutal to try and stop. And Mayfield, they can be that team when Nick Chubb is running and Kareem Hunt, who honestly I think he's a slightly better route running version of James Conner. They can be that team. They can be that style of an offense.
Now, Matt, I bought you a little bit more time by questioning Jeffrey there. So, who's your X factor for this game?
I think kind of an easy answer would be Baker because, as I said, if good Baker shows up, he's going to light it up. But how about Rashard Higgins on the outside? A guy who has really stepped up since Odell Beckham's gone out. He and Baker just have a connection. And, he really makes big catches, and he's a guy Baker looks for in the red zone and on third downs. And I'm telling you, if there is a third down, I'm almost as confident of throwing to Higgins as I am Landry, which is saying something. So if I had to pick an X factor, kind of an off-the-board one there, I'll go with that.
Now, quickly, just my X factor, I think is Ben Roethlisberger. If he plays a turnover-free game, I can't see the Steelers losing the game. But that's the rule when you that quarter. But next question, we always ask if you could pluck one person off the other team and put them on your team who would that be? But the caveat for you, Matt, because everyone said TJ Watt, it's got to be one other player than that. So I'm going to ask Jeffrey first. So you got a second. But Jeffrey, I know I asked you last week, but are you still picking the same guy off the Browns?
I believe I picked Nick Chubb then.
Yeah.
I'm still picking Nick Chubb. I am an enormous Nick Chubb fan. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and stick with Nick Chubb. Although it is tempting with Joe Hayden out to go Denzel Ward. But I'm going to stick with Nick Chubb, man. I love him. And I think that's almost universal among the Steelers is like, that is the exact running back Steelers Nation wants. We want Nick Chubb. We want that offensive line. We want Nick Chubb. We want to pound the rock. We want to see teams we want to run for 192 yards on somebody and just win a game that way. But we don't have a Nick Chubb. We don't have that line. We don't have that offense.
Yeah.
That's not the Pittsburgh Steelers right now.
Well, and he is a guy too that I think most Steeler fans could like unite and say, I don't hate him. Like, I enjoy watching Nick Chubb play. And like, it's weird for the rivalry in the AFC North. So Matt, who are you stealing off the Steelers? That's not TJ.
I wouldn't pick TJ Watt anyways because he went to Wisconsin's ass. So I'm not picking that. Mine's an easy one. Joe Hayden. Joe Hayden was one of my most loved Browns. He really embraced the city of Cleveland when he was here. His work with the Special Olympic stuff, I will never. It killed me that Joe Hayden went to the Steelers, but I was happy for him. If I'm ever happy about a Steelers winning a game, it's because Joe Hayden wins. Joe Hayden's phenomenal, and man, I love Joe. So that's an easy one for me, Joe.
You know what? With that too, like Nick Chubb now, when Joe Hayden was a Cleveland Brown, I've always been a Joe Hayden fan. Yeah. I'm sure your remorse, I felt the same joy when Joe Hayden signed with the Steelers. That absolutely blew my mind. He is a fantastic human. But if I'd have plucked someone, I said Myles Garrett last week, that pass rush would just be so nice with Garrett and Watt. So I kind of want to stick with that. But the last question of the evening, Jeffrey, score prediction. Who's winning and what's your final score?
I think this one turns. I actually think the Steelers' defense makes a difference in this one. I think it's going to get ugly. I'm going 31-13 Steelers. I think it's that kind of a game. Ben Roethlisberger always has that love of destroying Cleveland going on. It's just a thing he does, and to see Baker Mayfield and him face off, I think Ben's going to come out and have just a phenomenal game. And I think we're going to light it up, and it's going to be ugly.
Interesting. I suppose it could definitely happen if it's one of those Baker Mayfield turnover games, and without Joel Bitonio and Kevin Stefanski, I think that is a possibility. But Matt, what's your final score? Who's winning this one?
I think you're right. 31 points sounds right, but the problem is the Browns can score 34. And we get that 34 because Parky's going to miss a PAT to give me a heart attack. But no, I just the hell I'm coming on here and picking the Browns to lose. Browns are going to win, and I do think I think the Browns, just because it's one of these years of who knows, and and like I said, anytime you got Baker, you got a shot, one way or the other. You can say it on both sides. So I'm going to say the Browns actually figure out some things offensively, get it going, and 34-31 Cleveland Browns.
The reason why I've been picking against the Steelers in recent weeks, just based on how poorly they've been playing, but in this moment right now, they're virtually 100% healthy with Robert Spillane coming back. I think that is a massive difference, and why I think they will end up advancing. I'm not sure if it's going to be 31 points, but I can see it being like a significant edge for the Steelers, like 24-13 in Pittsburgh's favor. As we go out here, Matt, is there anything you want to plug for the people?
No, Dogs by Nature. The guys on the site do a phenomenal job. They're a lot smarter than I am. I just kind of handle the social media stuff. So check them out. They're really good people. And man, if Browns fans are unique people, and I've always had as much as I hate the Steelers, I've always had respect for the Rooney family for voting against Art Modell's move. And I think we can all admit that the Ravens eat ass. I don't know if you're about to do that on your podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's playoff football is awesome. Cleveland deserves it. Dogs by Nature, the guys, Chris and company, do phenomenal work there. So check them out. And I appreciate you guys letting me come on.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Jeffrey, I know you talked about your film room, so spill the beans on that one.
Before I do that, I just want to say to our guest here and all of any Browns fans, welcome back. It's been a long time, and I hope this stays. There is nothing I loved. I grew up in Ohio. I moved from Michigan to Ohio, and the Steelers and the University of Michigan were my teams. And so I loved when the Browns-Steelers rivalry was just pure hatred. They came back, their first game back, the Steelers blew them out. My roommate in Canton, Ohio was a Steelers fan. He put the Post-Gazette's front page on our door, and our door got kicked in by 3 members of the football team that night. So I love that rivalry so much better than the Ravens. Forget the Ravens. They can go away. I'm glad the Browns are back. I want that. I want that anger. I want that when the Steelers lose to the Browns, I want it to be like seething hatred, like they're getting the better of us. Not, oh, this was a horrible, disappointing loss. Anyways, to plug, my film room is coming out on Thursday. It's all about Alex Highsmith. It covers the Steelers putting linebackers on wide receivers. And also it's all about Alex Highsmith coming to his own in that game. He was a wrecking ball. He played an amazing game. Check it out. It's worth reading just to give the young man some respect. He played a phenomenal game and looks like the future of the Steelers outside pass rush is going to be strong, even with Bud Dupree likely leaving.
All right, that will do it for our show this evening. Make sure you're clicking over to BehindTheSteelCurtain.com and checking out our entire family of podcasts. Thanks for tuning in. For Matt Wood from Dogs by Nature and Jeffrey Benedict, my name is Michael Beck. Thank you for tuning in this week. Hopefully the Steelers get to do this again next week. I'm sure Matt feels differently, but we'll be back here next week no matter what. So we'll see you then. Have a great night.